My family ignored me for 30 years while spoiling my sister. When they asked me for $50K to save her, I said no. But then my mother tried to rob me and I sued them all. Now they're broken. I'm 30 years old, I work in corporate finance, and I basically just cut contact with my entire family about 6 months ago. And I need to tell this story because there are still people who think I'm a monster for what I did. The thing is, my mom called me on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at the office reviewing some quarterly reports, and she just tells me out of nowhere, "Owen, we need you to help us with something. Your sister is in trouble." And I already knew something bad was coming because my mom never calls me just to say hi. You know? It's always because they need something. It always has to do with Chloe, and it always ends up being me who has to solve her problems. But this time was different, because when she told me the amount, $40,000, I literally almost dropped my phone. I just sat there in my cubicle thinking, 40,000? How the hell do you accumulate a $40,000 debt? And my mom kept talking, saying that Chloe had borrowed money from some very dangerous people, that they were threatening her, that we needed to act fast, and the whole time she was speaking in plural, as if it was everyone's problem when we know perfectly well that the only one with money in this family is me. I guess I should explain a bit of context about why this call was the straw that broke the camel's back. I grew up being basically invisible in my house. I was born first. I'm the oldest son. And for the first 6 years of my life, everything was fine, I think. My parents were attentive, normal, the usual. But when Chloe was born, everything changed completely. She was the girl they'd always wanted, the perfect baby with her big eyes and charming smile, and from that moment I became like a piece of furniture in the house. It's not that they mistreated me or anything like that. I don't want to exaggerate, but I simply stopped mattering. Chloe would cry and everyone would run. I would cry and they'd tell me I was too old for that stuff. Chloe got bad grades and they'd get her tutors and buy her things to motivate her. I got good grades and it was expected. Nothing special. You know what I mean? It was that kind of subtle but constant favoritism that wears you down year after year. I remember perfectly when I was like 14, Chloe would have been 8, and I had saved for months to buy myself a video game console. I worked mowing lawns in the neighborhood, washing cars, whatever. I saved up like $250, which back then was a fortune for me, and I finally bought my Xbox. I was so proud, It was the first expensive thing I bought with my own money. But 2 weeks later, my mom came into my room and told me I had to sell the console because they needed the money to enroll Chloe in ballet classes. Ballet classes that she had asked for and got bored of after 2 months. But that's not the point. The point is they forced me to sell something I bought with my money, my effort, to pay for my sister's whims. And when I tried to protest, my dad told me, "In this family, we help each other. Owen, and you're the older brother. You have to set an example." I never forgot that, honestly. Things continued like that throughout my entire adolescence. Chloe wanted a car when she turned 16. They bought her a used 2015 Honda Civic in good condition. When I turned 16, I asked them for help buying a car because I needed it for work too. And they told me that if I wanted a car, I'd have to pay for it myself. So that's what I did. I worked double shifts after school at a supermarket and bought myself an old '98 truck that broke down every 2 weeks. Chloe went to college, an expensive private one, and my parents paid for everything, including her apartment and her expenses. I also wanted to go to college, but they told me they didn't have money for both of us, so I took out student loans and worked full-time while studying. I graduated with $30,000 in debt that I finished paying off like 3 years ago, and Chloe didn't even finish her degree. She dropped out in her 3rd year because she decided college wasn't for her, and she wanted to open a baking business that obviously failed after 6 months. So, anyway, when I graduated, I got a decent job at a financial consulting firm. Nothing spectacular at first, but enough to live on. I moved into my own apartment as soon as I could. A small studio, but it was mine, and I started building my life away from that toxic family dynamic. I thought that with distance, things would get better, that maybe my parents would realize they had another son too, but no. The calls I got from my mom were always to ask me for favors for Chloe. Could I lend her money for rent? Could I help her with her car payment? Could I get her a job interview because I already had contacts? And I, like an idiot, always said yes because I had this internal guilt that maybe I was the selfish one, maybe I was the problem. Looking back now, I realize how manipulated I was, but at that moment, I couldn't see it clearly. For years, I kept helping financially. I lent Chloe like $10,000 total over 5 years, money she obviously never paid back. I got her 3 different jobs through my contacts, and she got fired from all 3 for being late or irresponsible. I paid the deposit for 2 different apartments. And every time I tried to set boundaries, my mom would call me crying, saying, how could I be so cruel to my own sister, that we were family, that someday I was going to need help and I'd regret it. My dad almost never said anything. He was always quieter, but when he did it was to back up my mom. It was exhausting, honestly, but I kept falling for the same thing over and over again. So, we get to that Tuesday call. My mom explained that Chloe had met a guy on a dating app like a year ago, supposedly a successful entrepreneur, and he convinced her to invest in his business. He told her he needed startup capital to expand his import company, that he'd give her double back in 6 months, all the typical scam speech. But Chloe didn't have money to invest, obviously, so this guy connected her with some lenders who, according to him, were trustworthy. Lenders who turned out to be basically loan sharks with pretty shady connections. Chloe took out $40,000 from them, gave it all to this boyfriend who, of course, disappeared completely, blocked Chloe from everything, and probably that wasn't even his real name. And now these guys were demanding their money back with interest that had raised the debt to like $50,000, and they were threatening Chloe, going to her apartment, calling her all the time. The whole thing was really bad. My mom explained all this to me, crying, with that voice she used when she wanted to emotionally manipulate me, and at the end she told me, we need you to pay that debt, Owen. You're the only one who can. And I stayed silent for like 30 seconds processing what I had just heard. $50,000. She wanted me to pay $50,000 for my 27-year-old sister's mistakes, who hadn't made a single responsible decision in her entire life. And when I finally spoke, I told her, Mom, I'm not going to pay that debt. Chloe is an adult and she has to face the consequences of her decisions. And my mom exploded. She started yelling at me on the phone, saying, how could I be so selfish that Chloe could end up hurt, or worse, that I had the money and it wouldn't cost me anything to help, that after everything they had done for me, this was the least I could do. And I literally felt like something broke inside me. I told her, everything you've done for me? What exactly have you done for me? Because I paid for my college, I bought my car, I paid for my apartment, I built my life completely alone, while you gave Chloe everything. And my mom went quiet for a moment, and then said in this cold voice, I never thought my own son would be so cruel, and hung up. That same night the messages started. My mom, my dad, Chloe, 2 of my cousins, an uncle, all of them bombarding me with texts, saying I had to reconsider, that family helps each other, that I was the only one who could save Chloe, that how could I let something bad happen to her? I ignored them all. I had a beer, watched a movie, and tried not to think about it. But the next day the messages continued, and the day after that too. And by Friday it was like 20 different people harassing me. Relatives who didn't even talk to me normally now suddenly had my number and were voicing opinions about my supposed moral obligation to rescue my sister. It was surreal, like as if my entire extended family had gotten together to make me feel like the worst person in the world. But then something happened that changed everything completely. For the following Monday, I got a call from my bank. A very serious representative asked me if I had authorized an attempted transfer of $40,000 from my savings account, and I obviously told her no. What the hell was going on? She explained that someone had tried to access my account using my personal information, that the security system detected it and blocked the transaction, but that it was clear someone had my data. My social security number, my date of birth, my address, everything. I went cold. I immediately knew who it had been. I changed all my passwords, put fraud alerts on everything, and then called Chloe directly. When Chloe answered the phone, I was shaking with rage. I told her, did you try to rob me? Did you seriously try to steal from my bank account? And there was a long silence before she started crying and saying she was so sorry, that she was desperate, that the guys were threatening her, that Mom had told her I wouldn't notice because I had a lot of money. That Mom had told her. Those words stuck with me. My own mother had encouraged my sister to steal from me. I asked Chloe directly, "Did Mom tell you to do this?" And between sobs, she told me, yes, that Mom had gotten all my information for her, that she had told her it was family money anyway, that I didn't need it as much as she did. I hung up. I couldn't keep listening. That same afternoon, like around 6, someone knocked on my door. It was a loud knock, insistent, aggressive. I opened it, and there were my parents. My mom looked furious, and my dad had that serious expression he put on when he was going to back up whatever my mom said. They came in without me inviting them. My mom went straight to the living room and started yelling at me about how dare I accuse Chloe of theft, that she had just made a mistake, that I was exaggerating everything like always, and I exploded. I yelled at them that Chloe had tried to steal $40,000 from me, that wasn't a mistake but a crime, that my mom had helped her by giving her my personal information, and that they were both accomplices. My dad finally spoke and told me to stop being dramatic, that in families you share everything, that money could save my sister from very dangerous people. I told him it wasn't my problem, that Chloe was 27 years old, and I wasn't responsible for her stupid decisions. My mom then changed tactics. She sat on my couch and started with the emotional speech, that she had raised me, had given me everything, that I owed them for bringing me into the world, that if something happened to Chloe, I would never forgive myself, that she was disappointed in me, that she didn't recognize me, that when had I become so cold and selfish, and I was honestly so tired of everything, I told them to get out of my house. My dad stood up and told me, "If you don't help your sister, we're going to remove you from our will. You won't inherit anything." And I laughed. I literally laughed in his face and told him, "You think I care about your will? I don't want anything from you. You've never given me anything anyway." My mom started crying. My dad pointed his finger at me, saying I was going to regret it. And they finally left, slamming the door. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was very wrong. 2 weeks later, I received a certified letter from a lawyer. My parents were threatening to sue me for not fulfilling my family moral obligation. The letter was ridiculous, full of legal terms that meant nothing, basically telling me I had an ethical and moral obligation to help my family in times of crisis. I called a lawyer friend to ask if this had any legal basis, and he laughed, told me it was completely absurd, that nobody can sue you for not lending money to your sister, that this was just an intimidation tactic. But it still bothered me a lot that they had gone that far. I changed my phone number and only gave it to my Aunt Clara, my dad's sister, who had always been the only reasonable person in the whole family. I explained the entire situation to her, and she supported me completely, told me she had seen for years how they treated Chloe like a princess and me like an ATM. I declared zero contact with everyone, no more calls, no more messages, no more guilt. It felt like taking an enormous weight off my shoulders, but I also felt guilty, Because as toxic as they were still my family, and part of me thought maybe I was overreacting, maybe I was the one who was wrong. But the harassment didn't stop. They started calling me from unknown numbers, sending me letters to my house. My mom even asked old neighbors from the neighborhood where I grew up to contact me on social media to tell me to reconsider. It was like they didn't understand that I was done with them. Or maybe they understood perfectly and simply didn't care. One day my mom even went to my office. She showed up at reception asking for me, and when they told her she couldn't go up without an appointment, she made a scene. She started yelling that she needed to see her son, that it was an emergency, that I was abandoning my family. Building security had to escort her out while she cried and screamed my name. My coworkers obviously found out, and it was humiliating. My boss called me to his office to ask if everything was okay, if I needed help with any personal situation. I explained briefly that I had family problems I was handling, and fortunately he was understanding, but it was still horrible. After the office incident, I decided I needed to take more serious measures. I hired a real attorney this time and asked him to send cease and desist letters to my parents, to Chloe, and to every relative who had been harassing me. Formal letters telling them that any additional attempt at contact would be considered harassment and that I would take legal action. I spent like $2,000 on this, but it was completely worth it. After they received those letters, the harassment stopped almost immediately. Total silence. Not a message, not a call, nothing. It was eerie after months of constant bombardment, but it was also an enormous relief. It's been 6 months since all that. 6 months since I completely cut contact with my family. And honestly, my life has improved so much that sometimes I feel guilty for feeling so good. I got a promotion at work 3 months ago. Now I'm a senior manager of my department with a significant salary increase. I met someone too, an incredible girl who works in graphic design. We've been dating for like 4 months, and it's the first healthy relationship I've had because I'm not carrying all that family baggage. I have therapy every 2 weeks, where I'm working through all the trauma from years of favoritism and emotional manipulation. My apartment is peaceful. My life is stable. I sleep well for the first time in years. My Aunt Clara keeps me informed about what's happening with my family because she's still in contact with them. According to her, Chloe is still dealing with the debt. Apparently, my parents sold some things to help her pay part of it, but obviously they didn't have $50,000 either. Chloe had to file for bankruptcy and is living back with my parents at their house, working a part-time job at a store. My parents are telling the whole family that I abandoned them in their most difficult moment, that I'm a terrible son, that money corrupted me. There are relatives who write to me from time to time on social media to tell me I'm selfish, but I block them immediately. It doesn't affect me like it used to. Last week was my 30th birthday. I celebrated with my friends, with my girlfriend, with my Aunt Clara who came to visit me. It was a perfect day, and I didn't receive a single message from my nuclear family. Not from my mom, not from my dad, not from Chloe. And I felt nothing. I didn't feel sadness or relief or anger, just peace. And that tells me I made the right decision. You know, because for the first time in my life, I'm not carrying the responsibility of fixing someone else's problems. I'm not being emotionally manipulated into feeling guilty for setting boundaries. I'm simply living my life, building my future, and surrounding myself with people who truly value me. Sometimes I think about how everything would have been if my parents had treated me fairly. If they had taught Chloe to be responsible instead of rescuing her from every consequence, if they had valued me the same as her. But then, I realize there's no point thinking about that because I can't change the past. The only thing I can control is my present and my future. And I decided that future doesn't include people who only see me as a solution to their financial problems. My therapist told me something a few weeks ago that really stuck with me. She told me, "You don't owe them your life for giving you life." And she's right. Being a parent doesn't give you the right to exploit your children, emotionally or financially. And being a sibling doesn't mean being someone's personal emergency fund. I know there are people who think I'm cruel for not helping Chloe when she was in danger. That family comes first always, that I should have found a way to help. But those people didn't live what I lived for 30 years. They don't know what it's like to be ignored your entire childhood. They don't know what it's like to work for everything you have while your sister gets everything for free. They don't know what it's like for your own mother to help your sister try to steal from you. So their opinions honestly don't matter to me. The only opinions that matter to me are those of people who really know me, who have seen my side of the story, and all those people support me. Do I regret anything? Maybe not setting boundaries sooner? Allowing them to use me? For years? Lending that money they never paid back? Getting jobs for Chloe? Knowing they'd probably fire her? But I don't regret saying no to that $50,000. I don't regret cutting contact. I don't regret choosing my peace of mind over the guilt they tried to impose on me. And if I had to live through all this exactly the same way again, I'd make the same decisions. My life now is mine. My money is mine. My decisions are mine. And for the first time, I feel truly free.